Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Downs Committee, 21st of September. I will move to item 1 on our agendas. The first thing I'll say is, members of the committee, if you wish to speak, if you could possibly indicate by raising your hand electronically, we can then keep an eye on things and I can call you as we go through the list of people who've indicated. If you're not able to do that, if you can simply raise your hand and hopefully one of us will spot you pretty quickly and put you on the list to speak. I think that should hopefully cover that. It would be really nice if we could go round the metaphorical table and introduce ourselves. I don't quite know how that's going to work because you're probably looking at a different screen to myself. Probably the easiest thing is if I indicate by asking people to introduce themselves as I can see you on the screen. My name's Councillor Joss Clark. I'm the Lord Mayor of Bristol and I'm chairing this meeting this afternoon. Peter Abraham, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peter Abraham, Councillor for Stoke Bishop.
Thank you. And Jonathan Baker, please.
Jonathan Baker, member of the Society of Merchant Venturers.
Thank you. Amanda Sharp. You need to unmute yourself, Amanda.
Sorry, Amanda Sharp, Events Officer, Bristol City Council.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Rourke.
Hello there, my name is Paula O'Rourke, I'm a councillor in Clifton.
And Councillor Davis.
Good afternoon, it's Chris Davis, Councillor for Norwood.
Thank you. And Councillor Dadd.
Yeah, Councillor Kydad for Central Ward.
Thank you. Mary Pryor.
Mary Pryor, Merchant Venturer.
Thank you. And Simon Cooper.
Simon Cooper, Merchant Venturer. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Don Alexander, one of the councillors for Avonmouth and Lawrence Western Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, my namesake.
Thanks, Barry Clark, Councillor for Hengrove and Whitchurch Park.
Thank you. Kevin J.
Principal Accountant for Bristol City Council.
Thank you. And Ross Ansell.
Master of the Merchant Venturers and Vice Chair of the Downs Committee.
Thank you very much. Tim Ross.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Tim Ross, Society of Merchant Venturers.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, is there anybody that I haven't asked to introduce themselves, if there's anybody I'd left out? Oh, sorry, Ben. I'm so sorry, Ben Skews. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, Ben Skews, Downs Maintenance Supervisor at Bristol Parks.
Thank you very much indeed. There's nobody else I've forgotten, I trust. Okay. Thank you. I would now like to move on to item 2 on our agenda. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. We just
Jeremy.
2 apologies. Yep. Peter Ryler and Gillian Cam, the 2 merchant venturers.
Thank you. I would now like to move to, we haven't any apologies from anybody else, have we?
No other apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to move on to item 3, which is the action tracker. Are we going to bring that up onto the screen? We bring that onto the screen? Jeremy, are you putting that on the screen?
I'll do that for you, Chair, just a minute.
Thank you, it might be useful. And are you speaking to that, Jeremy?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Just a second, Chair. So it's there, Chair. the key issue, I think most of the issues are being resolved already on the agenda or being resolved through separate meetings. But the two key issues I think to point out are the A4018 project, which is now being run by or headed by, I should say, James Coleman. He's going to be bringing a report back to a future meeting. And also the Future Parks project. Jonathan James, I think, might be here a bit later on, but he will be bringing a report back to the November meeting on that issue. Otherwise, everything's either on the agenda or being dealt with separately.
Thank you. Is there anything anybody would like to raise on the tracker at this stage that we're not dealing with elsewhere? I can't see I can't see very many people. So if you do want to speak to this, if you can indicate, I'll take it as everybody's satisfied. Okay, thank you. I would now like to move on to item 4 on our agenda. It's the minutes from the last meeting held on the 29th of June 2020, and that can be found on pages 8 to 15 on our in the agenda sheets. Is there anything that anybody would like to raise in terms of inaccuracies or issues that we are not going to be raising elsewhere in the agenda? Is any? I can't see if anybody's indicating again because I can't see the full screen. So then if anybody... If we can take those as an accurate record, is anybody happy to, I'm happy to propose it. Anybody happy to second that they're a true and accurate record? Ross, are you happy to second? Mary. Mary. Thank you very much, Mary. That's very kind of you. I'd now like to move on to item 5 on our agendas, is the declarations of interest. Can I ask, has anybody got any interest they would like to declare? If they can indicate, please.
I think Kai Dud has raised his hand, Chair.
Kai, can you just let us know what your issue is and what's your interest?
Lord Mayor. Yeah, it's item 13, any other business. I think the fees around football are being discussed, and I'm a registered player on the Downs Football League, so I'd like to declare that.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Do we have any other interest to declare? If you can lower your hand, please, Kai, that'd be great. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 6 on our agendas, and that can be found on pages 16 to 21 in the agenda. I'd like to now move to public forum. So,
Dan, if we can bring in Steve Smith, Councillor Steve Smith, who's the first public speaker, and he's waiting in the waiting room.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Smith, can you confirm your microphone works?
Good afternoon, Councillor Smith.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To me, I've only just connected. Do apologise.
That's okay. It's not a problem. Can I ask you just, we've all had sight of the statements received. If you could just speak to your statement, you don't need to read it out. And I can ask you not to introduce any other information at this stage. So you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. As requested, I won't just read out what I've said. What I would point out is that since I wrote this actually several weeks ago now, I think it was back in August, we have had the illegal car meet on the Downs on one Sunday afternoon. And while it's not as simple as saying that if only we'd enforced litter and barbecues, that wouldn't have happened, of course not. But I think there is a little bit of broken windows theory happening here, that if people think that no one's too bothered what happens on the Downs, then more events like this will take place. Now, I raised this issue with the Mayor at the last full council meeting, and he and I agreed, I think, that engagement is at least as important as enforcement when it comes to getting people to respect the area and follow the bylaws, but you do need enforcement as well. And in that exchange at full council, the mayor indicated to me that he was very happy to talk to members of this committee about how existing council resources could be used to support that enforcement work on the Downs as well. So I would just encourage you, please, to talk to the mayor, have that conversation, and see what can be done to provide some enforcement support to Ben and to his team. And if I can help personally in any way with that work, then I'm very happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Your comments are noted, and hopefully we can progress this conversation within the council. I'd now like to move to statement number 2, Dr. Paul Main. Can we bring him into the room, please? Is he here?
Dr. Main is just entering the room now.
Indeed, Councillor. Your comments are noted, and hopefully we can progress this conversation within the council. I'd now like to move to statement number 2.
Dr. Main, can you turn off your YouTube broadcast, please?
Into the room, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you for muting, because it's slightly strange hearing my voice coming back at me. Dr. Main, if you'd like to speak to your statement, we have had sight of the statement in advance, so members will have read it, but if you can speak to it for approximately a minute, that would be really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You're quite faint.
Right, I'll speak a bit louder then. Well, the statement is as tabled. Basically, the family of Roger Fennelly, who is an eminent surgeon in Bristol, wanted to have some sort of memorial to him. His family spent a lot of time on the Downs, particularly around by Christchurch. And the CHIS committee came up with the idea that we might have an information board explaining about the memorials. Just a simple one, because there's always people looking at memorials trying to work out what they are. And we've been given about £1,000, and if there's any money left over, we thought we could do some conservation work so that the slates with writing on them will be clearer. So basically, I'm asking permission. I've been in touch with Peter Insol from the City Council, and also Christina Radden, who's the senior building surveyor, and she's going to see what work could be done. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much indeed for your speaking to your statement. I can just see on my screen that we've got Pete. Is that Peter Insol?
Yes, just to confirm, Chair, that's Peter Insol, who is referred to in the statement. I've asked him to come along to...
Thank you very much. I just wonder whether Peter Insol would like to just respond in brief, seeing as we have you in the room.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I've received emails and correspondence from Paul, and I mean, I'm thoroughly support the idea. All I would say is that there needs to be some agreement about what the maintenance is for anything that's put around on the Downs there. And I'm guessing I'm looked towards Ben Skews, to make a comment about that. But otherwise, I would fully support the idea.
Thank you very much indeed. The statement is noted, and I'm sure conversations will be happening within the council on just this matter. We'll now move on to statement number 3, which is Richard Hennessy. Can we bring Richard into the room, please? Richard, are you able to hear me? Can you confirm? Oh, okay, he's just connecting, is it? Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, Richard. I was just wondering if you could speak to your statement for approximately a minute. Members of the committee have had your statement in advance, so they will have read it, but if you can just speak to it and not introduce any new information, that would be great. Thank you.
If you could unmute, please.
Richard, you need to unmute, please. Okay, what I think I will do is I will move on and we can come back to Richard if he can connect, and then he can speak to his statement. I'd now like to move on to statement number 6 in the papers, Murch Clark. Can we bring Murch into the room? Is she connected?
Chair.
Okay. Murch, if I can ask you to speak to your statement. Members of the committee will have received the statements in advance, so will have read it. Not introducing any new information, please. You have approximately a minute. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can indeed. Thank you.
So I'm speaking in support of Carla Denya's petition, which I think is coming up later on in the agenda. I'm a resident in Clifton Down, and you'll see in my statement the pinpoint map showing playground areas across the city and how poorly served we are in this particular area. So I'd really appreciate the go ahead to look into further exploration of having a playground on the Downs. I would also support the idea of it being close to the water tower. It seems to me there is enough space there without impinging on any of the existing pitches that are being used. With the cafe there, it's something that would allow more social interaction when we get back to that sort of way of life. And the other point I'd like to make is that if we are able to go ahead to allow it to be something that can be used by children up to maybe early teens, as that particular age group has very little opportunity to carry on.
Okay. It's unmuted now.
Richard, we'll come back to you in a minute if you'd like to finish your.
Thank you.
Murch, Richard, if you could just hang fire a couple of minutes, I'll come back to Murch to finish speaking to her statement. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I unmuted by mistake.
Richard, if I can just ask you to go on to mute for a minute, and then I will come in. I'll ask you to speak. Murch, can I ask you to finish your statement? I beg your pardon. Sorry.
It's all right. I'm basically finished. So I'll just. Please ask you to consider the idea of a new playground. I think it's something that's sorely needed in this area. And that particular location seems to me something that would work very well for people in Clifton Down, where they don't have access to other playgrounds.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move back to Richard Hennessy. Richard, if you could speak to your statement, you have approximately a minute, and just bear in mind that members have had sight of your statement previously, so please do not read it out. Thank you.
Can you unmute, please, Mr. Hennessy? He's unmuted now, I think, Chair.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Richard. This is Dan. I spoke to you minutes ago. You're in the meeting now and everyone can hear you.
Right, okay. I just want to make the point, in addition to the statement, if I may, I'm concerned that too much attention will be given to the cycling lobby's survey, because that will certainly be biased in their favour, in that they will have chosen the questions, how to phrase the questions, and they will have chosen their target responders. The other thing I would like to know, is this subject going to go to planning, and will the public have an opportunity to have a comment on the planning application, that is the cycle loop on the Downs?
You actually are you're submitting a statement rather than questions today, so we're not able to answer those questions, but we will note your comments, and officers will obviously bear them in mind with moving this project forwards. So thank you very much. I would now like to move on to item 7 on our agenda sheets. That's matters arising from events and finance subgroups. The first one we're going to address is the events and finance subgroup, which was held on the 10th of July, and it can be found on pages 22 to 28. Can I ask who is going to be speaking to that? Is that you, Kevin?
Well, I'll just simply say, because I sent it, put it on the agenda, Chair, it's just a summary for your information.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments before we move on? Thank you. And item B on this one is the events and finance subgroup held on the 9th of September. The minutes are to follow. Does anybody have anything they would like to raise from that meeting in this meeting?
Supplementary dispatch last week, Chair, and again, exactly the same, just a summary for information.
Okay, if nobody's got any comments, then we can move on swiftly. I'd now like to move on to item 8, which is the Downs Maintenance Report, and I'll move over to Ben Skuse to give us that report, and it can be found on page 29 in the report. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So we're in the back end of the summer now. The first part of the summer was very much defined by coronavirus government lockdowns and the guidance that followed. The second part of the summer, we've returned somewhat to normal, thankfully. The intense crowds of people that we experienced in May and June have abated. Things have been relatively calm recently, modified car meets notwithstanding. Normal daily duties, really, a continued process of clear up the downs to a safe and reasonable state, and then cut the grass. Daily goat checks continue. The goats are well. What we have experienced, going back to that May-June period, exceptionally high numbers of visitors for one reason or another to the Downs. Many more people have found their way into the enclosure itself, many more people than normal. So the activity, down in their enclosure, accessing different parts of their enclosure, climbing over the fence line to access cliff tops to sit and enjoy the views and drink alcohol and eat food, has resulted in quite a lot of damage to the fence line in certain places. I've reported that to the finance subgroup. There's going to be extra costs associated with fixing up that fence line and gates that we've had damaged. We are ready to restart the Downs football season from this Saturday. It's been a bit of a process of communication, trying to understand what the provision is going to be, how many pitches will be required and what the start date will be, and also how do I keep my staff safe whilst carrying out the activity. So I've been in communication with Bristol Downs League. We've worked through that. So I'm having another meeting tomorrow with the chairman, Owen Dow, to finalise plans, but we're ready to go for this Saturday coming. The pitches are in good shape. They benefited from essentially football stopping before it should have done last season, so they've had an extended period of rest. Due to that, we were able to get onto the renovation works earlier than we would normally do in a normal year, so we have a good grass coverage, and things are well from a football point of view. That's Bristol Downs League. The situation with Bristol University intramural football on a Wednesday afternoon is still unclear at this point. Let's get Bristol Downs League going on Saturday, and I'll come on to Bristol University next. 2 events on the Downs now, as we know, Breaking Bread, but also now they have some event neighbours across the road. The Circus Montini, I believe, arrived on Saturday. I met with the organiser and carried out the normal site sign-on process. just finally, it's been obviously an abnormal but very, very exceptionally busy year in parks this summer. But it's been heartening to hear many communications to me from this committee, from members of the public, from colleagues in Bristol Parks. It's been good for the team to hear the messages of thanks from all of those parties for the hard work that they've done in trying to keep the place looking reasonable every morning for another day of chaos at times. But also we're really starting to notice that alongside us, just members of the public are now taking it into their own hands to get their own litter picker and come out and join us. And I think that's really important that people see this narrative of there's a group of staff that work here and they'll clear this up tomorrow morning. And obviously that's what happens. They're not wrong. But if these people also see members of the public clearing up after them, members of the public, take it on themselves to clear up the downs as well, maybe that will go a long way to making people think it's not just as simple as it's someone's job to clear all this up. You're having members of the public who are saying this is unacceptable and showing that, that it is unacceptable to just bring so much, consume it, and then just leave it. That is unacceptable. And hopefully next year we might see a change. Let's see what next summer brings. Let's see what the autumn brings. That's all from me, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. On the litter pick, I've actually been up there doing litter pick myself a few weeks ago, and I'm very good authority now what the drinks of choice are on the downs, because I picked up an awful lot of bottles and cans while I was up there, but certainly a worthy activity for people to do. And it's really nice to hear that more people are doing that. Councillor Alexander has indicated, thank you.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I think it would be more than appropriate that the committee would minute its thanks to the parks maintenance staff and ask Ben to pass those on to the staff, please.
I will do, Don. Yeah, will do.
Thank you. If you'd like to lower your hand, Don, that'd be great. Does anybody else want to make a comment or observation or have a question? Okay, nobody else has indicated. So I'd now like to move on to item 9 on our agendas. That's the events report, Amanda Sharp, and that will be found on pages 30 to 31. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So the only event that has taken place so far since the last Downs Committee is the Breaking Bread project. This set up at the end of July. They had a very successful first month with a lot of very positive media coverage. There was some concern expressed by residents around the Downs before Breaking Bread set up, but they did carry out extensive consultation with the residents groups. And since then, that we have, to our knowledge, no complaints have been received from residents about Breaking Bread. And residents have been given the contact details of the organisers so that if any problems do crop up, they can contact them direct. The organisers are hoping to be able to carry this project on throughout the autumn and winter, but they are currently having discussions about the feasibility of this, bearing in mind the latest government briefings on COVID. So I'll have to report back to the committee on how those discussions go. Upcoming events, as Ben mentioned, the circus has now moved on to the Downs. They're opening on Wednesday and they'll be open until the 11th of October. They're hoping to bring in some acts from the Bristol circus community. Their capacity will obviously be quite significantly reduced because they have to observe social distancing. Usually they would look to accommodate around 1,000 people, but this will be reduced to approximately 390. Obviously, they've had to put in place various measures in order to comply with government restrictions. But the paperwork that was submitted by the circus organisers satisfied the Safety Advisory Group that these measures do bring them in line with government guidelines. The circus have also appointed a COVID officer who's responsible for making sure that all the necessary changes are implemented to try and keep everyone as safe as possible. Moving on to 2021, we've received requests from a number of returning events, which I've listed in my report, who want to come back in 2021. Obviously, this will be very dependent on how things progress with COVID. That's all for my report.
Thank you very much indeed. Did Councillor O'Rourke indicate, or you just...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I put my hand up and then I put it back down again. It was for an earlier point, but I've just put something in chat to Jeremy, so that's sorted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Has anybody got any observations or questions on this report? I can't see any. Councillor Alexander, thank you.
It's me again, Lord Mayor, sorry. Yeah, just to say, we're really pleased to hear that Breaking Bread has gone well and that the circus is coming. The Events and Finance Subcommittee put quite a lot of time at quite short notice into preparing for this. And I think it's been a great pleasure and given a great deal of satisfaction to us to be able to support the hospitality sector in the city, many small restaurants, as they seek to recover from COVID. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If I can ask you to lower your hand again. Thank you. Has anybody else got any observations or questions before we move on? Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to item 10 on our agendas. That's the finance update from Kevin J, and you can find that on page 32. Kevin.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The table that you can see shows the current 2021 overall income and expenditure forecast summary. Based on the current information, there is a significant forecast deficit for the year. Income is expected to be, or forecasted to be, around 280k, and expenditure of 408k, resulting in a deficit at the moment of about £127,000. This is subject to change, but is due mainly to the coronavirus pandemic, which is causing a great deal of uncertainty within the events and hospitality sector. And the deficit will be met from prior year underspend. The forecast is yet to include any potential legal costs that may be associated with the defence of a judicial review, as they sort of still need to be determined. And the 1920 accounts are still to be formally agreed. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask if anybody's got any observations they would like to, or any questions at this stage to Kevin. No observations or questions at this stage. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move on to item 11 on our agenda, as petition for the playground on the Downs. I'm going to ask Councillor Denyer to present the report as before you. You can find it on pages 33 to 34. What I'll do is ask Councillor Denyer if councillors have previously seen the paperwork submitted, so if you can just speak to it rather than reading it out in its entirety. And if you can speak for a couple of minutes, that would be really good and useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So I'm presenting this petition to you today. As of this morning, it's been signed by 771 people, most of whom live within a short walk of the Downs in and around my ward of Clifton Down. The petition calls on the Downs Committee to yield the land to build a new children's playground on the Downs, preferably near the water tower and cafe on Stoke Road. As you'll have heard from the public forum statement already, there is no public play equipment in Clifton Down Ward at all, and there's a shortage of it in the vicinity around as well. There is one excellent set of play equipment on the Downs already, but as you all know, the Downs is quite long and thin, and so that playground is actually 1.5 miles from a big chunk of my ward. And the other one in the other direction is slightly less distance, but still a significant walk up a big hill, no way. After various parents wrote to me as the local councillor to ask for a new playground, I contacted Councillor O'Rourke as the Green representative on this committee, who advised me that the committee would probably want to see evidence of demand. So that's why I started the petition. And you'll see in my statement that I've done some quick fag packet calculations as to what kind of demand might be implied by the number of signatures. And I think that shows, you know, bearing in mind that I inevitably didn't reach lots of people with the petition, that there would be significant demand in the local area. I believe this proposal would knit in very well with the other proposals that I know you're currently considering for the Downs, including the Downs Loop, the new cafe, the renovated changing rooms, and I hope other facilities that I know have been mooted, such as location for bike rental and improved public toilets. I think these would combine to make the Downs a more enjoyable and stimulating place for all users. And I think, having had a quick look through the Downs Place and Movement framework recently to refresh my memory, I believe it is fully in line with that too. So to finish off, in the petition, I've deliberately not specified exactly what the playground would look like, exactly where it would be located, how it would be paid for, and so on, because I think that a lot of that is up to the Downs Committee, and that, you know, I'm looking forward to having a discussion about that. At this stage, what I'm looking for is a decision from you to support the construction of a new playground in principle, subject, of course, to detailed design and to funding being secured, and then, of course, planning permission. I'm also hoping that you'll be able to provide me with an expression of willingness to work with me and others on securing that design and funding. And I think there are a few different funding options that we could explore, and we'll maybe talk about that in a moment. But I deliberately haven't set that in stone yet, because I think that would be putting the cart before the horse a little, and I want to get an in-principle agreement to the idea of it, first of all. Many thanks for listening to my statement, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I would just like to ask you, have you actually pursued any avenues for funding in terms of future parks and any other funding streams?
So I did speak to the team who are working on the Future Parks project, and I explained to them at that stage, I think the petition had been going for a few weeks. I explained to them that there already seemed to be a reasonable amount of demand, and I put the case that given that, you know, one of the things that they're looking into is the potential for funding parks facilities differently, that this could be a prime example of that, and maybe it could be a mixture of council funding and private funding, and be sponsored by local businesses, something like that. I definitely think that's one of the options that should be explored. I think I told them that I hadn't got this slot on the agenda with you at that stage, but I was seeking it. So I think I said that I would bring it here first. Also, as you probably saw in my written statement, I don't know how the other Downs playground by the suspension bridge was funded, as that was before my time. But that would be interesting to find out, because perhaps this could be funded in a similar way.
Thank you. Can I now open it to the floor? Can I ask if anybody's got any questions to Councillor Denyer? So we don't have any questions at the moment. Oh, Paula O'Rourke, sorry, I missed you. Councillor O'Rourke.
Well, I'd just like to say that I think that from what I've learnt on the Downs, I think that Carla's gone about this in a very methodical and logical manner. And I think she's got she's approached the meeting today in such a way that she's allowing us to say yes, because what she's asking from us is an agreement in principle that we would, give up our Downs land. When that I've seen so many other projects that have fallen down because they didn't have that first important foundation stone set in place properly. So what we're asking for today is an agreement that we would like a playground of some sort there. And actually, having looked at the public statement, I was really impressed by the image that I think it was Tom Hathaway who put in with his public statement. And I think that nice and all as the playground nearer to the Clifton Suspension Bridge is, I would think that maybe going forward we'd have something that was less sort of playgroundy with swings and stuff like that, and having climbing blocks and much more natural looking things might be something that Carla would consider as well. So I think that it's a good thing, and I would certainly be happy to agree if it came to a vote today. And I would propose, I suppose, maybe I should do that. I would propose, and see if anybody would second, that we agree to support Carla's efforts to pursue this in the method and in the way that she has laid out for us here today.
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Alexander, followed by Councillor Abraham. I'm just looking in the paperwork to see if we're talking about how much acreage or how much area would we be talking about. If you can address that in a minute, Carla, I'd be really appreciative. So Councillor Alexander, followed by Councillor Abraham. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I'm happy, Lord Mayor, to second this in principle. I would just add a caveat that the Downs Committee's own financial situation has been made painfully clear in the previous item on the agenda. And the council itself, I wouldn't recommend going to the council for money because it also has its problems. We do need a clear way forward regarding alternative sources of funding for this, but in principle, I would be very happy to see this.
Councillor Abraham, followed by Ross Ansell. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'm very, very supportive of a playground within the vicinity of the Downs or on the Downs. I don't think it's a case necessarily of giving up our land. It seems to me to have such a facility for young people is part of the Downs. And I did a few years ago with some help of some pretty eminent people in the Stoke Bishop area look, and we did have offers from Trinity College to maybe put one down in the grounds there, which was because of this absence. The real problem is that, and Don's touched on it, is how it's going to be financed. And it's very, very easy for us to put up our hands and say we support it if we haven't got a clue how it's going to be built and maintained. And it's that second bit that is important as the first bit. Quite frankly, it'd probably be reasonably easy to get enough money to build it. But then you've got to look at maintenance. And I've been involved long enough to know that we've been struggling to keep some playgrounds that we've got open and well-known ones that were running into disrepute because of the lack of maintenance, and people were frightened to use the facility. So there's a lot of issues here that I think we want to be clear on. I also think it's got to be, if you're going to go on the Downs, it's got to be an area where young people, particularly children, can go safely and not too near the highways. I'm slightly worried about the cafe and running into the street and all things like that. So I think a lot of care needs to be done. I hope that perhaps we could say most certainly we support, and that's what Paul is asking for. And then in due course, and we need it with partnership with someone else, because we as a Downs Committee, I don't think have got the power, the money, or the skills to be able to put this together. It needs to be someone else have a look at this and come to us. If it means using Downs land, well, that's a judgment that can be made at that particular time. I don't see the location per se on being on the Downs is a stumbling block. But if it needs our support, I most certainly, if you could tick all the other critical things, maintenance, facilities, safety, and compatibility. You know, an adventure playground would not be good on the Downs in the true sense of the word. It gets to look sort of unsightly, and I think that could probably create problems for us. There's a lot in this. It's important, and I think that it would be a wonderful facility if we could get it.
Thank you. Ross Ansell.
So if I can largely agree with Peter around the cost of this, but we mustn't forget also that when we were looking at the cafeteria, there was a Secretary of State's inspector because it was effectively building on public open spaces. So that's a hurdle to overcome. And also, God forbid if Downs for People were successful, but being located so close to the road, this would require some enclosure to stop children running onto the road. And then you're into the, can you build enclosures on the Downs? So there's a lot of hurdles to overcome here. And I think, you know, the best we can do is to support the application, but acknowledge some of the difficulties.
Thank you very much. Nobody else has indicated just yet. Carla, can I ask you what sort of area, half an acre, what sort of size are you talking about, quarter of an acre?
That's one of the things I mentioned earlier that I deliberately hadn't specified the size, because I think that there's a lot of people other than me that will have opinions and experience on that. So that was kind of something that I deliberately left open for discussion. I can pick up some of the other points that were raised if you want.
Thank you.
So in terms of the proximity to the road, Peter, I agree with you. I wouldn't want it to be right bang next to the road. I would expect it to be kind of, set back a little bit. And maybe, I mean, I'm not a safety expert, but maybe that would remove the need for it to be fully enclosed. The one on near the suspension bridge isn't, for comparison. I'd be really interested if any members of the committee either know how the other one was funded when that was built. If that was within any of your remits, do let me know. If you don't want to spend time doing that now, I'll put my email address in the chat so that you can ping me an email after. Likewise, if any committee members have any ideas of organisations to approach for funding, I'd really welcome that input, because I expect a lot of you have a lot better connections than I do for that kind of thing. That's useful information about Trinity College. Maybe it's worth getting in touch with them. Also, I just wondered if the committee or perhaps Ben could tell us what the maintenance costs are for the current playground, because that would presumably give us an indication of what it would be for a new one.
And do you have an idea off the top of your head? I know it's putting you on the spot.
Is that for me, Lord Mayor?
Yes, Ben, if you can respond, if you have any idea of how much the maintenance costs are, and then I'll bring Peter in a minute. Thank you.
So, thank you, Lord Mayor. It's pretty difficult to extrapolate out the exact costs of, but essentially what we're talking about is we would be cutting the grass, potentially around the fence line, inside the fence line. It's not straightforward to maintain the grass within children's play areas, but obviously we could do it. It would add another element of work, undeniably. Other maintenance factors are really, with the one in Clifton, we've had quite a lot of surfacing issues, which we've had to try to sort out by buying aggregate and trying to build up the ground. And we've had, you may well have seen, pool water kind of pooling underneath the slide and things like that. There's not really a lot of trees in the proximity to this proposed area, unlike in Clifton, whereby we have quite a large tree risk, which needs inspection and things. So yeah, it's hard to give a figure other than, you know, without an extra element of maintenance. Proximity to what's currently a really busy area in terms of if we have to strim around a fence line, that would be tricky if we're trying to do it when there's lots of people sat out and about in the cafe surrounds. Also the proximity to the back of the dressing rooms, the fire exits to the dressing rooms. We'd have to consider that, and also any potential plans for the dressing room building itself. So I'd suggest positioning the play area almost a good amount away from the dressing rooms to enable any further plans for a larger dressing room building to give these both space. But
thank you very much. I'd now like to bring in Councillor Abraham.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. On the playground we have, I was involved in the setting up that. They were in the wonderful days when the parks had a budget, and there was a budget for playgrounds, and we made a bid for that budget and got it, waited a year or two, I think, and got it. Those are gone, those days, so that it doesn't exist as a source. It was a proper way that we wanted more playgrounds in the city, and so we were putting one a year or maybe two a year, I can't remember, on stream, and we did them all over the city, and that was one we were successful with in bidding. On the actual cost, I think I understand what Ben is saying from a maintenance point of view, but the very worrying cost is what sort of playground you have. This equipment now, because of health and safety has changed, has quite a limited life, and therefore you have to think about a budget that will replace equipment, because it does run out of time when you can have it. We used to have playgrounds all over the city and the swing didn't work or they were taken away, and it was no worry about a health and safety inspector turning up and saying. So it's a very different world that we've got to look at. So I really think that there needs to be a proper lot of work done, not only on location, but on how it will be maintained and properly looked after. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Denyer, would you like to come back on any of those points?
I don't think I've got any particular responses to them other than thanks noted.
Thank you. Councillor O'Rourke.
Well, I'd just like to come back to my proposal to put it to a vote. I think that there's been a very useful discussion about it, but you know, as I said, the foundation stone to anything that happens is approval from the Downs Committee, and that's what Carla's come here for today. I think that having a champion who's going to get behind this is a great resource to have. So, and I think that it's quite clear that Carla understands the challenges and the limitations that she's facing. But with all of the flux that's happening with other projects on the Downs, if we arrive at a situation today where we know that generally there is an approval for some sort of play equipment on the Downs, at least that's one box ticked off. So I go back to my proposal, which Don has seconded. So perhaps if we could have a vote on that.
Thank you very much for chairing the meeting momentarily, of course, Councillor O'Rourke. I'd just like to ask Jeremy in Democratic Services, have you got the wording written down so that we've got a proposer and a seconder? Jeremy, can you read the wording back to us as you've written it down, please?
Sorry, Chair, I'm just assuming it's just simply that the committee approves in principle the proposed playground. Does that sound what you were thinking of?
Is that broadly what you proposed, Councillor O'Rourke?
For more detail than that.
I think so. Yes. I mean, I think we could add more clauses to the sentence, I suppose. Originally, I suppose I was thinking that it would have to go to planning approval. So perhaps it is about getting something ready with discussion with the members of the committee, getting a proposal ready to go to put a planning application in. I think it's up to that stage, but I think that's unnecessarily confusing things. I think it's okay to have approval in principle to support the erection of a play park, or whatever you want to call it, on the Downs.
On the proposed site.
On the proposed site, yeah.
Councillor Abraham, and then followed by Jonathan Baker to follow, followed by Tim Ross.
There was a slight amendment. I would accept the wording that we heard first of all, but I'm very worried about the word approval. I don't think it is for us as a Downs committee. We aren't suppliers of playground equipment in playgrounds. That isn't the role of the Downs committee. And therefore, if there's some proposals that have a good playground, can be financed, etc., then I think that would be reasonable for us to take that on board. But approval is step too far. I think the principle of having a playground there, I'm more than happy to support. But quite frankly, I couldn't go any further than that today.
I'll bring in Jonathan Baker, followed by Tim Ross. If I can refer people to page 34 on our agenda sheets, Councillor Denyer has put it right at the bottom, number 2, and this probably sums up fairly concisely: an expression of willingness to work with Councillor Denyer and others on design and funding. I'll just leave that with you. I'll bring in Jonathan Baker, please. Thank you, followed by Tim Ross.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm just concerned that we're approving something of which we don't know the design, the size, the location. I think you've answered my question. There's an expression to willingness to work with them, and if it all goes in the right direction, then we could pursue it. But I think we don't have enough information.
Thank you, Timothy. I was calling you Timothy then. Tim Ross, and Councillor Denyer has raised her hand as well. Thank you.
Okay, don't worry about the Timothy. My mother calls me it all the time. I just want to support actually what has just been said. We must know. It's no good saying we approve in principle. I entirely agree, and I'm totally behind it. But then to add in the words "in the location specified," when we have no clear idea where that location is, how much land is involved, and as we've heard earlier, how much it would cost and where it will, how it would be maintained. There's far too much detail in this approval. The in principle point, which is what I think Councillor O'Rourke really wants, I'm absolutely for. But I wouldn't want us to circumscribe what part of the Downs it might actually ideally be, and it may not be possible for planning or any other reasons. Let's get the details sorted out later. The principle is the main thing.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to bring in Councillor Denyer. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak on this just to clarify. I actually agree 100% with what both Jonathan and Tim have said. And yeah, if you just have a look at the very last couple of sentences of my statement, I've got some wording there that you might like to use to sort of paraphrase for what you're voting on today. And in that, it specifically doesn't specify the exact location, nor does it have the word approve in for exactly the reasons that you've both just said. So the wording there is talking about a decision to support the construction of a new playground on the Downs in principle, subject to detailed design and funding being secured. You might want to write and planning permission as well, perhaps. And then number 2, an expression of willingness of the committee to work with me and others on that design and funding. So, you know, no obligation to take that form of words whatsoever, but if that's helpful, feel free to edit that.
Thank you. Councillor O'Rourke indicated, followed by Jonathan Baker. Thank you.
Well, I sort of put my hand up and then put it down again very quickly. I think Carla has more or less said what I was going to say. We're going down a rabbit hole with, you know, tying ourselves up with more words. Approval in principle, you know, I think Carla's phraseology there is very good, and we could just agree with that as far as I can see.
In the light
Jonathan Baker, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In the light of the lack of detail, I'd be very comfortable with number 2, an expression of willingness to work with.
Okay, so have we got a proposal to go with the wording from Councillor Denier's statement. Just grab it a minute, thank you. Are we proposing going with 1 and 2, 1 being a decision to support the construction of a new playground on the Downs in principle, subject to detailed design and funding being served and also planning permission? The second one could be an expression of willingness to work with Councillor Denier and others on design and funding. Can I have a proposal, please? Mary Pryor, thank you.
Which one are we going for?
Both.
I'm asking. Mary. Thank you.
Maybe a
Sorry.
proposal, so you could ask which.
Mary's indicated.
Mary,
you need to
you're on
unmute
mute.
yourself.
Need to unmute.
Top right-hand corner of your screen, Mary. No.
Bottom left-hand corner, Mary.
Bottom left-hand corner. Can the host unmute her?
Can you unmute her?
No, we've tried that.
Press your space bar, Mary.
I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll give Mary a couple of minutes to try and work it out. I think Jonathan indicated, and we can come back to Mary if she can unmute herself. Jonathan, did you indicate?
Jonathan's wrapped up in Mary's problem.
Yes, I think he is. Okay. What we need to do is we need to set a proposal. So, are we putting the?
Could I'm hearing and seeing that the majority of people are more than happy and willing to work to bring this project forward. But that piece in Carla's report is perfectly acceptable. But once you get into the principles and all the rest of it, so it's the one bit I personally, and I think there are a majority, are unhappy. If we could just have the second bit, which was in Carla's proposal, I'm more than happy to go along with that.
Thank you. I'd now like to bring in Mary Pryor. Thank you.
I think my system has now recovered. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I suggest that we go with the second statement which Councillor Denier has made, but include also the word location in there. So it reads an expression of willingness to work with me and others on the design, funding and location.
Yeah,
I think that's really part of it.
Thank you very much. So we've got Mary Pryor and I think Peter Abrahams have proposed and seconded the proposal of an expression of willingness to work with Councillor Denier and others on design, funding and location. Are we happy to take a vote on that?
Well, I think you just do need to say of what, because if you just do number 2, there's no actual object. So, you know, if we go back to that statement and say, so I'm just going to get it back up on my screen. So, so an expression of willingness to work with Carla Denier and others on the design and funding and location of a new playground on the Downs, and then you've got the whole thing.
Yeah. Peter Abrahams, you just...
happy with that. I'm not sure that to tie yourself to the Downs, where there are perhaps facilities quite close that could be suitable, it is wise, because I think you want to be as wide as possible. But if you want to say the Downs, because the Downs Committee have no staff to do this or anything. I mean,
but Carla's come here today to ask us if we would support. So it just is there a willingness and a support from us that if there's we get to a situation where we can create this on the Downs, the Downs Committee are prepared to, as she said, yield the land. I've heard this phrase so many times from the committee about it's our land, we will decide whether we yield it or not. And that's essentially what she's looking for here today. So I think if we just put in the object of the sentence in number 2, bish bash bosh, job done.
Thank you very much for your succinct summary there, Councillor O'Rourke. Bish bash bosh, obviously I remember that one. Okay, so we have the proposal. I don't know whether, Jeremy, you need to read it out before we move to the vote. We've got a proposer and a seconder. If you could read it out, Jeremy, and then we can go to a vote. I will ask for a simple raising of hands, physically raising of hands as a response.
Okay.
So, Jeremy, read it out. Thank you.
Willingness to work with Councillor Carla Denyer and others on the design and funding and location of a new playground on the Downs.
Thank you. All those in favour, could you please raise your hand now? Thank you.
1, 2. Sorry, can everyone raise their hands if they are in supporting it? 1, 2, 3.
Keep your hand
4,
up.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and Councillor Davis, are you voting in favour? Yes, you are. Yeah. So that is unanimous of those.
All hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Denyer, for bringing that to us today, and good luck with moving forward with your proposals. I would now like to move on to item 12 on our agendas, and that's the leisure loop. Do we have Vicki Cracknell with us today to speak to this?
Dan,
to give us an update?
Finley McNab and Vicki Cracknell, they're in the waiting room. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you. If you can let them in, please, that'd be great.
They're entering the room now.
Lovely, thank you. Good afternoon, Vicki and Finley. I wonder if you could give us an update. We have a report in front of us on page 35, but if you could just give us a verbal update and then we can take some questions. Thank you.
Is my colleague Vicki here? I think she was going to kick off. Okay, great.
Yeah, Finn, can you see me? Sorry, I was just getting on. Okay, so good afternoon, Downs Committee, and thank you for agreeing to speak to us today about the consultation that we've been running for the Downs Loop. We've sent you 2 updates, one at the end of August and then again in September. So I'm assuming the committee have got one dated the 11th of September?
Yep.
Is that the memo you've got? So in that memo, we've explained a bit about our consultation, but I've got Finn with me today, who's been running the consultation, Finn McNab. He's from Streets Reimagined. So we've commissioned him as an external consultant to organise the consultation and run it for us. And he is going to basically share this information that's on this sheet, but he's got a few slides. So are you happy for him to share the slides, because they're updated as of Friday, so they're more recent than the memo of the 11th?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, Finn, are you there?
Yeah, just coming on.
I can't see you at the moment. Oh, you're there, right, okay. Great, so he's sharing the screen.
Whoops, that's not what I meant to see. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Is that good? Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm Finlay McNab. I've been working with Cycle Sunday on a community engagement study, looking at the proposals for a loop on the Downs. So I'm just going to, a few slides I'll go through. So I'm just going to initially talk about the approach that we took and the kind of ethos and the kind of approach, I suppose, and then looking at the methods that we used. And then I'm going to present some interim findings. The consultation phase is still ongoing, so it's not a final report, but it's kind of a snapshot of where we are currently. So I just want to really emphasize that it wasn't a PR exercise. It was very much about a research approach, trying to understand how people currently use the Downs and how these proposals could support people's kind of the usage. Very keen to make sure the process was inclusive, so we could hear from a wide range of voices. And we didn't just focus on one method or approach. The idea was to have mixed methods, so we could give us a richer variety of data, so we could learn more. And we've also taken account of other work that's been done, including the place and movement framework. Okay, so the first stepping stone really was to do some stakeholder mapping, work out who the key interested parties are, and make sure we spoke to all these people. So we approached all these different groups and asked them to get involved. And then we undertook, well, taking into account the COVID restrictions that are currently ongoing, we did small walking focus groups. So this was walking the route of the proposed loop, trying to understand how it would work in situ. It enabled quite an informal, fluid, qualitative discussion. And you can see the groups on the left there are the groups that were able to attend. So we did 4 of these. We also used some old, traditional methods. So using some display boards. These were up in situ by the cafe on the Downs since I think the 7th or the 8th of August, and they'll be there till the 30th. And there was also extensive publicity. So Bristol 24/7, Bristol Live, and also using local community magazines as well. I should also emphasise there was targeted leafleting as well, and we also approached lots of local schools as well, have been helping with publicity and posters and such like. One other key method that we used was a website or a platform, and on that platform it told us, it told the visitor all about the proposals in both sort of a kind of summary, but also they could download a much more detailed proposal. There's also some frequently asked questions there, and critically there was also a survey they can undertake as well, which had both sort of open questions and more specific questions. Okay, so I've raced through that, but I'm going to go on to some of the initial results that are coming through. But I'm just going to caveat that with it is an ongoing consultation process, so this isn't a final finished version, but it's based on what we've done so far. So it's headlines, a snapshot. So we've had more than 5,200 visitors to the website so far, 601 surveys to be exact completed. And there's a real mix of ages and different people that have completed the survey, including 36 people with disabilities. And we've had participants have been particularly focused around the Downs, but also right across the city as well. So I'm just going to read out some headlines here. So 82% of people didn't agree that the paths are currently suitable for all users. And the reasons they gave for that was the paths are not considered to be consistently smooth or even, and they're not wide enough either, and sometimes difficult to access and exit. So we asked the question, are there any activities that you would like to do at the Downs but currently aren't able to? And the number one answer to this was to cycle with children. And when we drilled down a little bit further into why those people couldn't do that activity, they said fear of traffic and lack of safe facilities were the key ones that came back. 89% of people also agreed that the proposals would improve access for children learning to cycle and also for less confident adults on bikes. And 92% agreed that the proposals would improve access for people using wheelchairs and mobility aids. I haven't got too many more of these. So 94% agreed also that the zebra crossing would make it easier to cross State Road as well. So that was kind of a headline of or snapshot of some of the quantitative results we've had back, but we've also analysed some of the qualitative. So there was a couple of open questions. We asked people how the changes would improve their experience. Sorry, we didn't ask them how it would change their experience of using the Downs, and how also we asked them how we might improve the proposals. And as part of this analysis, we also drew on the results or the findings that we had from the walking groups as well. So we sort of drew these together. So one of the key themes was that a lot of people felt that the proposals would improve safety and access of vulnerable users. There was a sense that it would allow people to enjoy the environment in a much calmer environment in a situation, and not intimidated by busy traffic. There was also an interesting selection of people talking about how different user groups might use it. So people who use buggies and for children cycling felt it would be easier. And people talked about being able to use the new path for pushing wheelchairs. And a lot of people felt it would be safer. And they would, people talked about the joy of seeing children and adults gaining the confidence to cycle. So lots of positive things there, and making it a lot safer for vulnerable users. Theme 2, it'd be fair to say there was also quite a lot of discussion around how the mixing of different user groups on the shared paths might work. and this was more sort of a variety of views. So there was, it's fair to say, there was a sort of a small minority that were very concerned about people potentially cycling too fast close to pedestrians, but there was also some people who sort of explicitly mentioned that they'd be happy to to cycle slowly on the paths as well and take care. But it's worth mentioning that. There was also quite a lot of discussion around, well, I say a lot, it was a sort of a minority, but a relevant minority, talking about whether the path should be segregated or not segregated between different users. That was a sort of theme. But there was also quite a few people just pointing out really that there was nothing stopping people who wanted to walk on the grass and experience the natural environment still doing it. This just gave them an option, particularly on a wetter day. The third and final theme really was that a lot of people felt that it wasn't going far enough, it wasn't being ambitious enough, and they wanted more changes and to be more ambitious. So this was quite a sort of common kind of, this is good progress. We do support it, but we felt like actually it could have gone further and potentially exclude traffic completely from circular road. Again, and that was repeated there really, similar theme. And this was also a very common theme. This came out of the walking groups a lot as well, that people wanted to see a lot more better crossings across the roads in the Downs, including Ladies Mile and Stoke Road. And they also wanted to see the 20 mile per hour zone speed limit extended across the whole area as well. I thought I'd sort of close on this quote here actually, because I think it sort of sums up quite nicely that the proposals were, I would say, so far have been largely supported, and to agree that sort of it trying to strikes a balance between different aspirations. So that's where I was going to leave it. One thing I didn't mention was the different groups that have come back, and sort of, but might be Vicki might want to take that up and explain that a bit more.
Thank you so much, Finn, for sharing that. I don't know how you guys want to proceed. Would you like to ask us any questions about the consultation process? And obviously, we're very aware that this is how it looks today on the 21st of September, and we've still got 9 days to go. 601 people have filled it in, and by the 30th, that number will have increased. But that's the data, and it has been fairly consistent. Those high percentages that Finlay shared at the beginning, they've been consistent from the first few weeks.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd now like to open it to the floor. Does anybody have any questions or observations about the report we've just received or the update we've just received? No, not at the moment. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to say, I remain very positive about this, and of course, a lot of details will yet to be talked through, especially at the planning stage. So it's got another stage to go through yet, but in principle, really positive about this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Rourke, if you'd like to come in.
Well, I'd just like to say well done and very interesting. I see you've got 601 surveys complete. Do you have a target for how many you'd like to, to make it successful?
Finlay?
Well, we'd like to get as many as possible. I think comparing it to other projects I've been involved with in terms of response rate for a survey that didn't offer any incentives or anything like that, this is, with a week to go, is probably the highest I've been involved with, and I've been involved with quite a lot over a career of over 20 years of working in this sort of field. So it's that we want more. I think that what is good is it's large enough to be able to be relatively confident about some of the themes and some of the findings that are coming back.
Thank you. And could I just ask you another question then about you said that it's not just people who live nearby the Downs, but also, will you ultimately be able to give us more drilled down into information? I'm very interested to know whether people from other parts of the city would actually come up and use the Downs, and if there were more bikes there. So it'd be really important to know about other access, people accessing from other parts of the city?
Yes, so we the software we use allows us to drill down quite a lot into detail, and we can pick out different areas of the city and analyze their particular feedback. We have had a spread across the city. It's more condensed around the Downs, but it certainly is not only the Downs, and we've got mapping imagery that we can draw off to demonstrate that as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to bring in Simon Cooper, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Of course, when we started this process, we didn't know that we'd have the road closure powers which have come in with the coronavirus regulations. I wonder whether it's worth looking into how they've been received in other parts of the city, obviously, to see whether it's worth considering that. I was intrigued by the slide of the person who said, let's just close all the roads. I don't support that particular idea, but it's interesting to see how public perception has changed, even just in the last 6 to 8 months.
So it's a really interesting point, and you're right, there is definitely been a change. There's been a very big uptick of people taking up cycling. So Sports England have said it's increased by 100% during lockdown. They've done some research. I guess the point for us is that we're trying to get a proposal that you're all happy to sign off, and we want to move forward with it. And we feel really passionately about providing the infrastructure in terms of these accessible paths for much younger children learning to ride, and for people in wheelchairs and all the groups we've talked about. So we would fully support a conversation about the roads and the way the roads could be changed or developed. But I just guess I'd want to clarify, Simon, what your expectation would be about that. I mean, maybe that you're just wanting to air that view. Do you see what I mean? Because I don't think we would take that on to start sort of suggesting at this stage that we wanted to close the roads.
I think I'm just asking whether there's information or evidence available from elsewhere from the past 6 months of what the public reaction is to road closures, in addition to the detailed plans you have for the loop.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some interesting surveys that have been done. Sorry, Finn.
I just happen to know that Waltham Forest have done quite a lot of evidence-based research based on the Mini Hollands project. They've done their Livable Neighbourhoods project, which has been in place a bit longer than lots of the places. Yeah. I think Rachel Aldred is the academic that has led on that particularly.
Before we move to the proposal before us today, I would like to ask if anybody else has any questions or observations. No, it doesn't look like we have. Either Finlay or Vicki, if you would like to put your proposal to the committee, and then we can move forward with your proposal today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, yes, just sort of, re-emphasising the fact that the consultation's not over yet. It will finish on the 30th, and then Finlay will prepare with our input a full report that we can send to you guys with the final results. So subject to that showing a similar picture of support for the changes, and people feeling that it would improve the environment there and the conditions for cycling and walking. What we would like to be able to do is, once that report is done, we would like to proceed to make a planning application, and we would like the committee to give their consent for that, because we know you won't meet again now till late November, and it would be really helpful for us to know if you support us putting in a planning application so we can start working on that as soon as the consultation is evaluated.
Councillor Alexander, thank you.
I would be very happy to propose that we do give permission for them to move to preparing for and submitting a planning application before our next meeting, because this is something that's of enormous value, and I don't want to see it delayed any more than is necessary.
Thank you. So what we need to do is come up with a form of words that is acceptable for the committee to vote on. So do I have a form of, has anybody got a form of words that they would like to put forward?
I noticed Councillor Alexander said he would be willing to move permission to prepare and submit a planning to submit a planning application before the next meeting, which is on Monday, the 16th of November. So you could take that as the form of words if Councillor Alexander is happy to agree to that.
I am happy. We will all, of course, have a chance there to comment on the planning application, so nothing is closed, but I would be very happy for that to be the proposed motion.
Can I have a second?
Second that.
Can I have a Thank you very much, Councillor O'Rourke. Again, if I can ask the committee to indicate that they are happy with that proposal, in favour of it, if they could raise their hands now, please. Thank you.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I wanted to speak on that proposal and I raised my hand for that.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Peter.
That's right.
Do you want to, after we finish the vote, if it's okay with you?
I can't, it's the proposal I want to talk to.
Okay, all right, okay.
It's changed, hasn't it?
Okay. Okay, we will go back a step then. Councillor Abraham, thank you.
I just want to be sure. Don said, I wasn't quite clear what he said. Prepare is the word that is it our responsibility to prepare the planning application? I thought this was agreement for Cycling Sunday to submit. That we would not stand in their way by submitting it, but our involvement in preparation, it should not take place at all. So I was worried about that word there.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, if you could just read it out to us again, just for clarity, please.
Well, if I perhaps read out what originally Councillor Alexander said, first of all, which is move permission to prepare and to submit a planning application before the next meeting. So what Councillor Abraham seems to be suggesting is that should be changed. So I guess it's down to Councillor.
I'm happy to go with that, Lord Mayor, because I think perhaps Councillor Abraham does bring a little more clarity to it by suggesting we should allow them to prepare and submit.
So perhaps if I read that again, Chair.
Please.
The permission is sought, that permission is granted for Cycle Sunday to submit a planning application before the next meeting.
That's fine with me, Jeremy.
Okay, so Councillor Alexander to propose the and Vicki, can I bring you in, please? Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's really helpful. I just want to be clear that it's really fantastic that we can move forward, do the preparation and the submission. I can't guarantee we'll do it before the 16th of November, depending on, we need to do quite a lot of work on policy. So but does that sound right? That we will move forward with it. You'll make the decision today and we'll do it as soon as we're ready.
That was my intention. Yes.
Okay. Right. Councillor Abrahams.
Thank you. I don't want to be pedantic, but it said before the next meeting, which meant that if they didn't put it in or wasn't submitted by the next meeting, that would fall, wouldn't it? There wouldn't be any. I would have thought that you don't require that word. All we're saying is you can go ahead and submit, and I think it's when they are ready and when they're able to submit it. So I don't think it needs by the next meeting or any of those words, because I think they're getting in the way of the decision-making process.
So perhaps,
okay, thank you. Jeremy, can we give it another go then, please?
Just removing that, that permission is granted that the committee grants permission for Cycle Sunday to submit a planning application.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think we might be, the form of we may be there. So I've got Councillor Abraham to propose it. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, Councillor Abraham. Again, if I would like, I'll ask you to raise your hands if you are in favour of this proposal before us today.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, that's unanimous of all those present, Chair.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Vicki and Finlay, for all your efforts and your time and energy. And thank you very much for coming today. Thank you.
Very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I would now like to move on to item 13 on our agenda, which is any other business. We have an item which has been brought by Jonathan Baker. Jonathan, if you'd like to speak to your item in any other business, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As you know, both the Students' Union and the Downs Football League play on the Downs. The Students' Union have a contract which always allowed for a reduction in their fee if matches were cancelled. And last year, as Ben has alluded to, we had very bad weather and they lost a lot of matches. So that they're not requesting a reduction in their annual fee. They will have a reduction as per their contract. But the request is actually to have a COVID-19 clause, which is that if the government says no groups of 6, 12, whatever the rules are, if sport falls into it, we will not charge them for the days they have been allocated to play. The Students' Union, are a charity. I think if we can't provide the facilities due to a government rule, we probably cannot charge them. I would ask the committee to endorse that. And at the second point is that if that rule should apply to the university, I feel we should, although they haven't asked for it yet, apply it to the Downs League for the same reasons. They have, though, asked for a reduction in their last year's fee. This was an exceptional year for them. They've played, as you know, since 1905, and they've never not finished all the games in a season, except for last year, because due to Ben and his team's hard work, they have played the matches until they have finished them. And that wasn't possible. So they had their first unfinished league. So they're saying we couldn't play. We don't have the money because we collect the money per player, per match. We didn't have the match, so we didn't have the collections. They have, although it's £11,000 they've asked for a reduction of, they have paid the remaining amount of money subject to well, they have paid it anyway, and they're waiting for our approval that they don't need to pay the last £11,000. That is all, Lord Mayor. Could I ask for the approval of the committee, please?
Okay. Councillor Abraham has indicated. Thank you.
That was the only agreement. I don't want to speak. That was a thumbs up.
Oh, that was an agreement, was it? Okay. Does anybody want to make a comment on the proposal before we move to a vote?
Do we want to have a mover and a seconder, Chair?
Should I propose it as I brought it to the committee?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Barry Clark, I think, was finger up first, as I'm trusting your seconding.
Second it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, Jeremy, again, can you just read out the proposal, please, to us before we move to the vote?
So the request is from the Downs League for reduction in their fee and for approval not to pay the remaining £11,000, and also in relation to the Students' Union a COVID-19 clause that they will not be charged for days they have been allocated for and being unable to play.
Hang on a minute. I think we need to clarify this. Jonathan.
Can I simplify this? The Downs League have asked for a rebate for the days they didn't play in last season. Stop. Both leagues have asked for a COVID clause, which is that they are unable to play due to the pandemic or similar. They won't be charged for those days. As simple as that. Simple as that.
I don't know about the word similar, COVID or similar. What's similar to COVID?
Okay, let's call it a pandemic. Let's just keep it as simple as that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Jeremy, if you could possibly read it back to us then, so that people are clear of the proposal.
I'm sorry, Chair, I'm going to have to ask for it to be read again. Chair, sorry about this. But
the Downs Football League have requested a rebate for those matches in the 2019-20 season they were unable to play due to the COVID. COVID-19 pandemic. And secondly, both leagues have requested a clause be inserted into their contracts that in the event of a pandemic.
Sorry, just hang on a second. Yeah.
In the event of a pandemic, meaning they are unable to play, they will not be charged for those days. We have a very good relationship with them, but and we can settle it. It's all done by mathematical calculation, so it's very straightforward. You don't need to put that bit in.
Jeremy, I'll give you a moment, but if you can read it back to us, Mary, I'll bring Mary in at this point. Thank you.
Yes. Can I just be pernickety? Is the Students' Union, is it actually a league? Isn't it just the Students' Union?
It's called the Intramural League, I believe.
Right, okay. Well,
you're right.
We ought to get it right, didn't we?
Okay, should we call it the Student Union Intramural Football?
I think we should get it right.
I think it is the Student Union Intramural Football. I think whether it's a league or not, I'm not sure the category of that, but thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
Chair, Student Union Intramural Football League, is that what you're saying? Or?
No, no league.
No league.
Right.
Because we're not sure.
Right.
Okay, Jeremy, can I ask you to read it back to us before we move to the vote?
The Student Union Intramural Football are requesting a rebate to their matches for the 2019-20 season, which they were unable to pay due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And both leagues have requested a similar clause is inserted in the contract in the event of the pandemic, and in the event of the pandemic will no longer be charged for all those days.
Did you say at the beginning that it was the Student Union that was having a rebate? Because it was the Downs Football League, I said.
Yes, Downs Football League, yeah.
So just so we're all there, the Downs Football League is having a rebate for those days that they couldn't play due to COVID-19 or whatever we're going to call it, the pandemic. And both teams are requesting a clause that if they can't play due to a pandemic, they won't be charged for those days.
Yeah.
Mary.
I'm sorry, but we must include in there, Jonathan, season 1920, because we're talking about two different periods of time, aren't we?
You're absolutely right. Sorry, I took that. It was in there. Was it not in Jeremy's comment? No.
Not second time around.
Oh, sorry, apologies. So the rebate applies, as Mary's quite correctly picked me up for 1920, and the new clause applies for 2021 and going forwards.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm really sorry. The television turned itself off just then, so I missed a few moments of that. Jeremy, can I ask you to read it back to us again, please, before we move to the vote? Thank you.
The Downs Football League requested a rebate for the matches for the 2019-20 season, for which they were unable to pay due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And both leagues, that's the Downs Football League and Student Union Intramural Football, have requested a similar clause is inserted in the contract in the event of a pandemic, and in the event of a pandemic will no longer be charged for those days for the 2020-21 season and going forwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, are we all happy with that?
Yes.
I would now like to move to the vote. Again, I will ask you to raise your hands if you are in favour. So if you could raise your hands now, please. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep. Chair, that's unanimous of those present.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Before we close the meeting, are there any other matters of any other business that we have not dealt with? No. Thank you. I'd now like to move on to item 14, which is the date for the next meeting. The next meeting is the annual meeting of the committee and is scheduled for 2 o'clock on Monday, the 16th of November 2020. Thank you very much for attending today and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.